YouTube channel near you.
Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome. Hello there, Poncho. A little twisted. Hello there, Amy. So welcome, everybody, to another edition on this Tuesday evening. So, Christina, Michael, how are you all doing this evening?
Doing great. How are you, Grizzly?
Wonderful. Enjoying life, like always. So, yes. So, what's going on in your all's life?
I just got back from a vacation in Dallas. Loved it for a day or two. It was hot, but that's what Dallas, Texas is, hot.
We keep the heat on down here.
Amen.
What about you, Christina?
I'm not gonna lie, it's been a rough, probably week and a half, 2 weeks. But I have a wonderful person that's helping me get through it.
Awesome. So, ladies and gentlemen, we had a family emergency with Bill Howard. So our hearts and prayers go out to him and his family emergency. He is rescheduling for next week. Great guy. I love him to death. So if you're watching, Mr. Howard, we are saying prayers to you and everybody. But I reached out to a co-host of mine that I really do miss. And I cherish him a lot because we have a lot of good laughters together. And he's a heck of a guy. And when I first met him, I saw a very bright future for him and a heck of a transition of what he was doing with his life in the direction he was going. And that actually led him to becoming a part of the Outlaw family, in which he still is. And I make sure and let him know that again tonight and backstage. Mark Bolden is a very well-rounded guy, an outstanding guy in the community. And he actually earned a spot with us on our platform because of his integrity and how he holds himself. Everybody loves him to death, and we all miss him. But I wanted to showcase him and his achievements tonight with you all and the viewers, because somebody like Mark, you don't come across every day, and is a rare person to meet. And his quality and his characteristics of a person is an overachiever in my book. And there's nothing I would never do for him. And I don't know if he understands that. But Mark Bolden, welcome to the show. Nice to have you back. How you doing there, sir?
Hey, it's good to be back. You know, it's funny. I was thinking that when you after that intro, it's kind of overwhelming. I thought it'd be funny if, you did the intro and then all you came back was this.
Yeah, right. So for the viewers that don't know you, sir, start us out and tell us who you are and what you do.
Sure.
And what you're doing now that led up to your goals and where you're at today.
Sure. It's funny because I've always been into paranormal since God knows, since I was a kid, right? And way back in the Fate magazine days and TV shows like In Search of, and I never really lost that love of the field. And then as I got older, I actually found myself living in a couple of haunted locations, really haunted locations. I had these odd backgrounds, as I found out, and I had some really amazing stories that came out of it. Everything from the child spirit that actually happened to be a friend of the family who passed away, and decided that he wanted to come back and revisit the location multiple times. Woke me up a couple of times too. But yeah, just a couple of haunted locations, and then a couple of personal experiences with not me myself, but I know that people throw around the word demon a lot, right? And when it's not, but it was a couple of demonic possessions, and one of them ended up in tragedy. But yeah, I've been in it a while, but me myself, I became a paranormal researcher, and I like to gather data. I've been out on some investigations, and I always found some interesting things to talk about. But really, what it's about now, it's about quantifying the data and coming back from my experience in business, in analytics, you should have actionable, what we call actionable data, and that's hopefully something that we can talk about. And there's actually a framework that I'm working on to actually deliver this. Um, it's important, and like I said, I'm not going to dominate this beginning part, but if you want to talk about it, I'm all for it.
So,
Oh, and I
Mark,
do video too. That's the other thing. We're working on a really cool project.
nice. You're a busy guy.
Yeah, try
So,
to be.
before we get into talking about your paranormal and filming and all you do, I heard a little rumor that you and I have something in common. I'm prior
Okay.
military. Do you want to tell
Oh,
me
you
about your
are, huh?
military experience?
Yeah, I served in the Army. I was actually with 4th Infantry Division, but it was interesting because at the time you had 4th Aviation Brigade, which was underneath 4th Infantry Division. 4th Infantry is out of Fort Carson, Colorado, mechanized infantry, and I was with an aviation unit, which was pretty interesting. So we kind of had this funny thing where you had to be licensed on everything in the unit. So we had to, I don't know if you like, this was during the 80s. We had these long sheets of paper, which was our license. So
I
basically,
have
you looked at mine and had, I was qualified on everything from like 5-ton expando vans to Humvees to 17 tons and then of course you had all the different armored vehicles and everything. It was pretty interesting, but it was pre-Gulf War. This was actually during the time when Reagan
Okay.
was commander in chief, and we the things that we were dealing with at the time was Libya and Central America and things like that. So, but
Nice.
it was an interesting time. There's certain things that you can't really talk about, but there was
Oh, of
uh,
course, right.
yeah, because I did have a security clearance when I was in there, but it was pretty interesting.
So,
So
you actually just hit on something that gives us even more of a little bond here. So, in the Army, it sounds like you were an 88 Mike. I was 2T1 in the Air Force, which is the same thing as an 88 Mike. I can drive
Well,
anything that's got wheels on it.
I was just called a 67 Victor. So we were crew chiefs. We're aviation crew chiefs. We had to wear the wings for crew chief and stuff like that. So it was
Nice.
pretty interesting. Yeah.
That is awesome. Well, I thank you for your service.
Thank you for
I love
yours.
having, thank you. I love being able to have veterans and military people to bond with. I love that you and I actually got to do a lot of the same stuff in the military. And you talk about the licenses. Let me tell you. So, I actually got to work in the shop that we made licenses in, and we would
Yeah.
mess with our superiors. Like they would come in to get their license updated, and we would throw in there in the mix. We put like a coffee cup or something like that.
That's awesome right there. That's awesome right there. I love it.
So, lots of jokes and shenanigans within being a truck driver in the Air Force for me.
It's funny. My daughter's actually in the Air Force right now.
Oh,
She's
nice. Well,
yeah,
thank you for her service.
she's stationed in Japan, in Masawa, Japan, at the Air Force Base
Oh
out
my
there.
goodness. So I was actually stationed in Tucson, Arizona at Davis Monthan Air Force Base, and I had
Mhm.
orders to go to Okinawa when I got out.
Oh wow.
So yeah, I know. I don't know what was wrong with me that I decided to leave instead of go to Okinawa. Like crazy girl, right?
But
But
still, you answered the call. That's the way it went down. And if anything had happened, you would have been ready to do what you got to do, and that's
exactly.
that's that's what we were trained for. And it's
Yep.
funny because I was talking to I got a lot of friends that are vets too, people that served at the same time I did, and it's funny because they were talking about at the time when we had the whole stuff going down with Bin Laden and stuff like that, and they were saying it was funny as well. I had the same sentiment. You say, you know what? Put a sniper rifle in the hands of a good vet. We'll take care of that problem of yours.
Right?
Isn't
I
that
love
true?
it. So, did your military career kind of lead you into hunting paranormal, or was that more based on what you experienced as a child?
Now that was actually based on what I experienced as a kid. I mean, I've always had that interest, and it's funny because I've heard about certain things in the family, and I was told things like, if you open yourself up, you can communicate, that type of thing, and I've always felt I was sensitive, and have had some empathic abilities. But the one thing I never did was I never tried to open myself up, and mainly because you hear some people, like some of the more famous ones, like Amy Allen actually talked about it one time, and she said that when she first started opening herself up, they were coming to her in the middle of the night. They would show up and they're trying to wake her up because they realize that there's somebody around that can communicate, that can actually hear them. And I just felt that that was not for me. That's not, I'm happy with investigating. I'm happy with researching, studying, maybe feeling things, but I'm not trying to hold a two-way or one-way conversation with anything that's out there. I'm not trying to have anything follow me home to where I have to cleanse my house, investigate where I live. I'm not saying that, that's off the table. It's just not something I'm trying to do right now.
Growing up, did you have any kind of mentor or member of the family that kind of helped guide you in the paranormal and believing in that even stronger?
Actually, I could probably say my mother. It didn't have anything to do with her specifically mentoring me, but she did have a strength. She wasn't one of those people that was a negative naysayer. That's a bunch of BS, and those people are just seeing things, and UFOs don't exist, Bigfoot doesn't exist, there's no such thing as ghosts. She was actually very open to these things, and she was the one that actually got me into things like Fate magazine, because I used to read her. She had the subscriptions to Fate, and I used to read all these stories from the people, the experiencers. People had paranormal encounters or UFO encounters and things like that, and then of course, those TV shows that were out. Of course, the Leonard Nimoy, shows, and then of course, what was it? Jonathan Frakes had Beyond Belief, and as you go through it, I was just always into all of those shows, and I was wildly fascinated by them because I'm a firm believer in the fact that as human beings, we like to think that we have everything figured out, and the reality is we don't. And I also feel like there is a good part of science, of the scientific community, that can actually help validate some of these experiences that people are going through. Trying to remember who said it wasn't Arthur C. Was it Arthur C. Clarke
Yeah, it
that said
was
that, had this thing about the any
Twilight Zone.
sufficiently advanced. Well, I remember he had this saying. I think it was Arthur C. Clarke said, any sufficiently advanced technology would be perceived as magic to a lesser society or whatever. And
Exactly.
and I think that what some of these universities are doing in these studies into the quantum realm, when it comes to human what is human consciousness, what is it that moves on after we die. I think that they're on the right track, but they're still very far behind being able to communicate with the other side. I wouldn't be surprised if many generations down the line, somebody actually did come up with a technology that lets you call your long dead grandma on the other side like a regular call.
With AI these days, you never know.
Hey, as you just said, though, you know, there are people who do communicate with the other side, and you yourself said you feel like it would be able to be an ability, but you choose not to have it. And I'll tell you, I know you don't know much about me, but I am a psychic medium.
Mm-hmm.
And I do see that you are a conduit if you choose to be.
A conduit. Wow.
Well, so here's the thing that always got me. It was the fact that things seem to follow me around. Like one place I lived in. This was actually many moons ago. This was actually in Buffalo, New York. There was I don't know if you guys knew this, but there's a street. I think it's called, if I remember, I think it's called Richmond Avenue. It might be, but there's all these old mansions like the Carnegies, and they had mansions because at one time Buffalo was a huge steel town. You had Bethlehem Steel, and then you had all the mills out there, Purina and everything, and then that was because you had the Erie Canal. So it was the gateway to getting products in and then getting them around the country. So they all had mansions out there, and there was a building I lived in, and it was an apartment building that was for the well-to-do, I guess, at one point. And they took the basement and they gutted the basement and made it into a big, huge apartment. Now I'm young, I got a good job, right? So I'm like, I want that place. And the windows were all above ground. And it was one of those places you get on the elevator, had the old scissor, the old scissor door elevator. You had to have a key to go down. So I was the only one that had a key to go down to the basement apartment. And then you had laundry facilities down there further down the hall. But after a certain time, nobody was allowed down there. And I had friends, and they come over to watch football, and they were terrified of my place. Because I would hear like somebody call my name. Imagine you're just in there and there's nobody there, and all of a sudden you're Mark, and you like turn around, there's no one there. You would hear conversations in the middle of the night in the hallway, but there's nobody out there. So you would hear two people talking, but you could never make out what they were saying. It was always that that type of thing.
Mhm.
And I think the craziest thing was in my bedroom, you would hear say my name, you would hear a banging.
I was trying to type, Mark, and you made me mess up. I was like,
Poncho.
Mark.
That was Poncho. But so there was you would hear banging in the wall. There was this one wall, and it sounded exactly like someone had a Stilson wrench, a pipe wrench, and they're banging against pipes. So you naturally think, well, maybe it's the pipes banging together. It's an old building. And it would get so loud in the night. It was always the same time. What is it? What's the normal time? Between 3, 4. And I got to go to work in the morning. So I wasn't
Right.
scared. It used to annoy me. And I remember one day I went to the building, the maintenance guy, when he happened to be downstairs. I said, hey, I'm hearing banging in the walls and the pipes. So I bring him in. I showed him the wall where I'm hearing, and he said, that's impossible. I'm like, why? He said, there's no pipes in that side of the building. He said, it's just a wall. This is just like walls, and then it goes toward outside. So one day I got so fed up. I heard the banging in the wall, and I literally sat up in the dark. And I remember saying something to the effect, I was like, hey, I gotta go to work in the morning. Please shut the hell up. Like that type of thing. And the
Mhm.
banging, this loud banging, tapered off until it turned into a light tapping, and then it just stopped. And then it never happened again.
Nice.
It is proven that even though we as humans may not be open to it, they know that our souls are available for communication. So, what is your craziest experience so far?
The craziest experience I ever had was when I lived in Yonkers. There was it was myself and my cousin Lisa. We were roommates in this apartment. It's my little cousin Max. Well, he's not little anymore. He's a grown man now, but at the time he was very young. And he used to play with he had a friend Steven, and they used to play. You know how kids are. They play on the rooftop of the building, stuff like that in New York. So they were playing on the rooftops like they always do. But at one point, Steven was playing on a rooftop by himself, right? And he fell off the roof, and he died. He didn't survive. And I remember um, I came to live with my cousin Lisa not too long after that. And Lisa told me stories. She didn't tell me stories before. Stories came out afterwards when I told her what my experience was. And one day when I was in the room, this happened, and I was, my alarm went off. It's time to get up for work, and I didn't wake up right away. And I'm not a late sleeper. I'm normally an early bird. I rarely sleep, as a matter of fact. I get maybe 3 hours a night. So it's not like I oversleep and I'm in the bed all the time. But that day, I didn't wake up right away, and I felt someone on the bed pushing down on the bed, like, "Hey, get up!" Like that type of thing, hard. And I remember, you do that thing where you're clearing your eyes, you're hazy in the
Mhm.
morning. And I remember clearing my eyes. And then just as I cleared my eyes and I focused, Steven was standing at the foot of my bed in shorts. And as soon as I realized what I was looking at, he shot like a blur into the closet and was gone. So that was my first time seeing a full body apparition. But he did make his appearance many other times. The dog, we had a Rottweiler named Czar, and Czar was terrified of the room. I wasn't scared or anything, but Czar would go to the room, and he would walk around the other side to avoid going too close to the room. My cousin Lisa had seen him a couple times, and there was always orbs in that place. But I found out later after we left that place, like from what I understand, she looked into it after we left, and that place had multiple suicides in it, like 3. So I don't know, but
That's
I
great.
think with all the orbs, maybe that place was a very active location. Maybe it was a portal
Yeah.
area.
I don't know
But it was.
why I'm hearing the number 8 when you're talking about it, but I
Mhm.
am hearing the number 8. How did it make you
So my
feel?
IQ.
How did it make you feel to
About
have
that.
that encounter?
How did it make me feel when what?
To have that encounter.
It's weird. I wasn't scared or anything. I mean, I'm not. Even when if I go to a location, I don't freak out or anything like that. It's things happen. I know a lot of times you see people want to go on the people want to go to a location. The first thing they do is like, what was that? Well, you know, you got the old was it the Zach Bagans thing going down? What was that? What was it? That, you know, that whole, and it's like, wait, you're there to investigate. And you know, I don't, I'm not saying that things can't catch you off guard and freak you out, but you're there to investigate. Um, I don't necessarily get freaked out easy. It takes a lot to freak me out. But I didn't feel anything from that experience. Like I didn't feel scared or anything like that. I just felt like it was an interesting experience. And when it registered what it was, he's got his holy water. And when it when it registered what I was looking at, it was a what it I think my cousin Lisa, they thought it was hilarious because when that happened, I was going out in the middle of the night and I'm trying to catch EVPs. I'm taking pictures in the dark, getting getting the flash going. I'm catching orbs, catching all types of weird stuff. And then I was doing putting baby powder down, trying to find the things that are disturbed. And then that was dumb because then the dog gets up and walks around and she had a cat. So but yeah, they were like, yeah, Mark, instead of Mark being scared, he just started investigating the location.
So speaking of you investigating and going out on location, I hear that you have something called a parabox. What in the world, Grizzly?
They don't know me, Mark, do they? I don't make me get my anointment oil out. Yeah. So what is your take on the parabox?
Oh, you talking about the Paravox, the app? It's pretty
or,
fun.
or the actual machines people make.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things. It's funny because like one of my friends is actually Grayson Schmidt, and Grayson has gone out and modified devices on his own. He's a guy's amazing when it comes to being an electronics wizard, and it's funny because for me, having a background in I started out in engineering, right? But I've been working in information technologies for a majority of my career. But there's always something related to science and technology, and I've always said I'm going to go back to school and get a degree in physics because I've always been wildly fascinated by physics. Anything to do with physics, I'm all in. I watched lectures on YouTube. I'm really all in, and I just think that there is some overlap between what we study and science and technology and physics, right? So when it comes to the devices, I like to know a little bit more about how they operate. Like, for example, if you look at if you look at some of these devices, they actually work on like REM pods. They actually work on the same technology that a theremin works on. The old musical instrument, with the sounds. So it's actually the same technology, and it's just detecting when something gets close. But either way, what makes REM pods so effective is the fact that something has to be within a certain distance proximity to those devices. So if it's sitting in the middle of the room by itself and is registering something, then that means that there's something that's generating an electromagnetic field, an EMF field that's actually close enough that it's causing this device to trigger. In an empty room or in a room where we're nowhere near this device. So when you talk about some of these devices, like the Epic box and things like that, these things that rely on something getting close to it to trigger a yes, no, and things like that. I think that stuff is wildly fascinating because, how do you hoax a device that is manipulated by an EMF field?
Right.
Aside from the fact that you could say, well, it's in a room where there's a breaker panel, a breaker box, or the HVAC just kicked in and things like that. But even still, if that's the case, then that device should be triggered all the time. It shouldn't be triggered when as a response to a question. I guess is what I'm getting at. And so I like these devices. I think the only one that I'm still up in the air about is that's me, still Mark B. I think the only one that the only device that I'm little concerned about or I get curious about is the what is it the one with the I'm having brain freeze right now, the SLS camera, right? And the reason
I totally concur with that. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, the SLS camera it's an amazing device. However, it can suffer from pareidolia, right? So it's important that if you're using devices like that, you're better off having it on a tripod. You're better off having that device to where you're not moving it around and so forth. Put it in a fixed location and then see if something triggers it. So a lot of these devices that are out there, I think that they're very reliable. But then again, we're going back to what I said about having a solid investigative framework. So you triggered something on the device. What do you do with that data? How do you quantify it?
Right.
So the Parabox, for people that don't know, it scans AM, FM frequencies backwards or forwards at different variations of speeds. How do you think that is accurate, or what is your thoughts on when people ask questions and they get illicit response that are factual and accurate?
Oh, I think that's extremely reliable, and here's why. Because you're scanning across multiple channels at whatever frequency you set it to. So let's say, for the sake of argument, you're on an investigation and you're getting a response, and I'm helping you hoax somebody. Okay, so I would have to have a transmitter that's in total sync with your receiver. So as your receivers jump cycling through those frequencies, I would have to be transmitting on the same frequencies at that same rate to be sending messages that are picked up so we could fool somebody. So when someone is getting an intelligent response across 10 channels and it's a 3-word response, how do you fake that? And if it's an intelligent response, what year did you die? 1898. Are you a man or woman? Are there people with you? There are others. Things like, you're getting direct responses across a device that's scanning multiple frequencies in rapid succession, right? So how do you hoax that type of response? And I think that makes it a very reliable device. So I personally like it. That's like the SB7 Spirit Box. The Paravox does it, but same thing as SB7 Spirit Box. And the Paravox app does like multiple things. It does like that, and it does EVPs. It serves like an Epic box almost. So I think it's reliable.
So you mentioned that if you try to play hoax on somebody with this, it's pretty improbable. Do y'all try to play hoaxes on each other?
No, that would be. It's not even worth the effort. To try,
You're right.
it's like I said, I would have to have something that's transmitting across radio frequencies, and it has to be in perfect sync with whoever is holding the receiver. I mean, it's just number one. It's just not. It's sort of like the most complex practical joke in the world that you're like, I'm not doing all that.
It's too much
So
work.
Mark and Christina and Michael actually have a video that I'll play real quick to show you how this works. Stand by and action.
Can you tell me your name? Is that Debbie? Is there a Debbie here? Debbie, are you still here? Can you tell me how old you are, Debbie?
Well, it just gives you a little bit of, but I've actually got intelligence response and actually accurate answers, dates, names that people have died on property, committed suicide, families that have been there, born and passed. So yeah, I do believe in that technology.
Now, what's interesting is if you listen to the responses, like when it said Michael and it said Debbie, it jumped at least 4 to 5 frequencies for that one word.
Yeah.
And that's what I said. That's what makes those devices a lot more credible than most. And then also, that when you see you folks use the Estes method, so you're sitting there, you got noise canceling headphones. You can only hear the SB7. And then you have someone in another area of the room asking questions, right? And then the person that has the SB7 with the noise canceling headphones, all they're doing is repeating what they hear in the headphones. So they don't actually hear the questions that are being asked, right? So Grizz asks a question. He says, what is your name? And in my headphones, I don't hear him ask that question, but I hear the name Debbie come across, and I go, and I just shout out Debbie, and you make a note of that. Now you have an intelligent response to a question that I never heard. And I think that that's the way it should almost always be used,
And that's how you quantify the information. In my past experience, Mark, dealing with spirits and other individuals from the other side, or whatever word we choose, in some occasions, in some locations, there can be such thing as what's called a depot, for lack of better words, where they're passing through. It's kind of like a train station, if you may, where spirits are passing through, going in different directions. Have you ever come across that?
No, I haven't come across that personally, but I do like, and we'll talk about it in the framework, like some of the things that people encounter when they're doing these tests. I kind of take odds at what questions are being asked to these entities. For example, and I'm not trying to go off on a tangent here, but one of the things that bothered me is, people say that they say, like, what's your name, and how did you die, and things like that. I'd like to know more environmental questions, like, for example, what year do you think this is? Are you cold where you're at? Are you hot where you're at? Do you breathe air? Because how many times you caught an EVP and you hear like a cough, or you'll hear a sneeze, or you'll hear an exhale. If you're dead, why do you need to breathe air? Is this some maybe some residual memory from when you were alive, and you're not really breathing air? It's just like the Matrix, where you, like, when they said, you think that's air you're breathing? You're just doing it, but you're not really breathing air. So I kind of wonder these things. And there's been times too, I remember hearing somebody like this close to my face in pitch dark, and they said something and I couldn't make out what they were saying, but you could hear the breathiness of their speech, like that type of thing. So when it comes to using tools like the SB7, and we're asking these questions, I think that we should expand a little bit more on the questions that we're asking, to try to figure out a little bit more about what their interpretation of their existence is. Do they see other people around them? Because I always, you seems like some locations that they're not aware that there are other spirits, or maybe there's other spirits around, but they don't see all of them. And is that because they're on different vibrational planes?
Yes. That's my answer to that. Yes.
Okay. That's why we speak about different vibration levels with the individuals. With us putting out a platform of love and light, we speak about, and especially Christina and her platform, individually, we speak about different vibration levels, and those different vibration levels represent your spirit and the levels that you vibrate on, and so we tend to believe that can carry on past the physical body.
Yeah.
Patty D had asked, what is the difference between a spirit and an apparition? What's your take on that?
That's a difficult one. I mean, I think it's just an issue of just what people interpret them, or what people define them as, or what people call them. I don't really think that there's a difference between a spirit and an apparition. Maybe the fact that an apparition could be something that's human and potentially non-human as well. I'm not sure. But me personally, I don't really see much of a difference between the two. I just what people call it.
I agree with that. People say a ghost, an apparition, a spirit. Like, there's many different names for entities that are in the afterlife, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
what is the difference, Mark, between a residual And what other types of hauntings and apparitions?
Well, you have intelligent hauntings and you have residuals, and residuals are more of a a recording of energy in an environment. And that like we know from experience that certain types of materials might record energies. It might be wood, it might be water, it might be granite, quartz, things like that. And quartz carries vibrational energy on its own. But you see that because you see, for example, these hauntings seem to replay an event, and they don't interact with you. It's almost like you could see, the partial. You might see a partial apparition of something, and maybe it walks into a wall. I think one of the famous ones I thought was amazing was that I don't know if you guys remember the story of the one guy that was clearing out his basement, and he saw the Roman soldiers, and these Roman soldiers marched through his basement, and he couldn't see the bottom of the Roman soldiers because they were partially in the ground of the basement. And then they just walked past, and they ignored him like he didn't exist. And then they walked right into the wall. But when he continued excavating part of his basement, he found the remains of an old Roman road. So to me, that's more of a residual haunting. They don't interact with him. It just seems to be replaying an event. Whereas you have these intelligent hauntings, like the one that you played with the SB7, where you might ask it what its name is, and it comes back, says Michael, Debbie, where they're trying to actually communicate with you. And I think that's the big difference right there. These traumatic events, you know, it sounds like the Hollywood cliche: family gets murdered in the house. Um, and then these events kind of get replayed. Or you look at like Gettysburg, and you still hear a battle going on. You hear gunshots. Well, they're clearly not still fighting the war. It's like it recorded it, like a tape recorder. It's just playing back these events over and over again. And I also think
So,
that people who are more sensitive are the ones that actually tune these in, because there could be other
yeah,
people that can go to Gettysburg, and for them it's just a historical visit, and they're like looking at
wow,
everything. They're like,
right.
wow, this is amazing. And then other people go there and they're like, I saw someone walking through the woods, and it was a soldier.
So what you're talking about in the spiritual realm, for a lot of us, we would say, well, that's a person who they had an instant end of life. They didn't
Hmm.
realize that their life was ended, and so they're living through the experience
Yep.
over and over again because they don't realize they're not still there. And
Yeah.
so them being on that lower vibration level, the only way for them to move past it is to be brought up to a higher vibration level. And my question for you leading into that is, when you go on these expeditions, all these things that you're doing, do you ever take anybody with you that would be able to help those spirits to be able to pass over to their next life?
Yeah, I'm usually going out with people, and there's usually somebody that's either a psychic medium or something that can help. And I've there's even it's funny because there's even been times when I've even looked at a paranormal show, and there's about a billion of them, right? But
Oh
there's
yeah.
sometimes there's sometimes you'll see some of these shows, and someone will be trapped. Like you'll hear like a child spirit, right? And they say, oh, there's a child. Everybody's so interested in gathering evidence, right? And I've even gone back, even if I see something on TV, and I've even gone back and prayed for that spirit, and asked
Yeah.
and asked God, can you please send your angels to help liberate them, take them into the light, cross them over, because I think it's terrible. I think it would be a terrible existence to be trapped on this earthly plane. And
Mhm.
it's crazy because I see these things, and it's like, why don't they look? I had a friend of mine, another army buddy of mine, and we reconnected after all these years. And unfortunately, I only got to he was one of my best buddies, and I only got to be friends with him recently, again, all over again, for about a year, because during the time that we were friends, he found out he had cancer. And we used to talk all the time, and we'd crack each other up and just crack jokes and have an awesome time. And I'll never forget one of his last messages to me. He DM'd me, and he said that he found, they checked him out, and he thought it was going into remission, whatever. And he said he found out it spread all over his body. He said, I guess this is what they call game over. And I remember telling him, I said, look, I said, here's the deal. I said, you know what I do? I said, when the time comes, you go into the light. I said, time is different there than here. I said, if you're trying to reach out, I said, I know you love your daughter. I said, if you're trying to talk to her, you're trying to talk to family members, you want to see how things pan out. I said, don't hang around here. I said, it's not like you're going to have to wait 40 years to see her again. I said, you'll probably be able to see her from where you're at. I said, but when that light comes, you go right into it. I said, this is not where you want to be trapped. And I've had this discussion to go into a deeper level, these philosophical discussions, and then it crosses into religious beliefs, everything from Christianity to even the ancient Sumerians and the creation stories with the ancient Sumerians and the Anunnaki about the Watchers, and in their case, we had fallen angels, but there's this crossover across all these different cultures, and honestly, from what I can see, this is the place that they were compelled to, and were not allowed to ascend from this space. Because of the whole thing with the fallen ones, and their interactions with humans and so forth. And even when you look at what some people say, and they say, oh, these spirits, they hate humans, they hate the living. It's like, well, why would they hate the living? Well, maybe because some of them blame us for the reason that they're trapped on this plane, that they can no longer ascend to where they came from. And I said, if that's the case, and they're bound to this place, maybe on a different frequency that we can't see yet, but when you have these people that say, oh, it's a malevolent haunting, and it's a non-human spirit, I have to go back and say, this is not, you don't want to be trapped here with them. This is not the place that you want to be with them. You could potentially be exposing yourself to finding yourself consumed energetically until there's nothing left of you.
So I have, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I have two things I kind of want to hit on. One of them is a personal story, and the other one I have a question for you.
Mhm.
Because what you're talking about is so intriguing to me, like, honestly.
I'm
So
agreeing.
you're talking about people being on the lower vibration levels and being stuck in, I'm talking about that or whatever. So on August 29th, in 2 days, I will be celebrating the end of life of a fallen comrade. We were in Iraq together, and I was not planning on talking about this at all, but here we go. We were in Iraq together, and he passed on his 21st birthday.
Wow.
We had a bomb go off on our on their convoy, and he didn't make it through it.
Sorry to hear that.
Before he went out on the convoys, like a couple days prior, he had asked me, he was like, hey, when we get home, are you going to go out on a date with me? And I was like, you're crazy. What are you talking? Just joking around, whatever. And then he's gone, right? Like, so this is his 20-year end of life anniversary, but about 9 months ago. So when I see things, I don't see things on low vibration levels. I see things on high vibration levels.
Mm-hmm.
About 9 months ago, I had somebody in my home with me, and she was cooking, and she looked over to her right, and she literally jumped out of her skin. She was like, what the F is that? And I was like, what are you seeing? And, her and I knew that we were both spiritually in tune on different levels. And she was like, you don't see that's in your house? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she goes, it's a guy. He's got an afro. He's a black guy, but his face is burnt off. It's gone.
Wow.
In that instant, I broke down and I cried so hard because I realized CJ had been attached to me for 19 years. And I didn't even know. Like, I am me. I do what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't even realize. And at that point, that's where I realized that people who have traumatic endings get stuck. They get stuck in those traumatic endings. They get stuck attached to the people that they were with. And they don't even realize they're gone. And I broke down in my kitchen, and I had to literally sit there and talk him through understanding that he had passed.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the most, I don't even know what to call it, extravagant experience I have ever as a medium experienced, because like I said, I don't see those low vibration levels. I don't see those people that need help passing over.
And that's very traumatic to you, and it's because it's personal. It's very personal. Yeah.
So, and the fact that we're sitting here having this conversation, and I'm like, wow, his anniversary is coming in 2 days, and like we're talking about something that totally pertains to him. It's so amazing. Like, I love that we get to bring these kind of things out. But the question I had for you, Grizzly has had me filling in while he went out on his adventures, and I keep hearing people talking about fallen angels
Mhm.
and the Mount
Uh-oh, Mark.
Vernon.
She opened up the door.
And I'm so intrigued by this. I
Mhm.
feel a personal calling to it. Can you tell me about this? Because this is not something I have personally researched.
Yeah, so you have and the reason why I say that there's some crossover because in what happened with like the ancient Sumerians, they talked about the Watchers and the Anunnaki, right? So that's
Right.
they were that their background with first written languages with cuneiform, things like that.
Yep.
But these were not legends to them; these were a matter of history. And it's funny because there's always parallels between this and even Christianity, because in Christianity you had the angels, the Watchers, and then they said that they found the human women beautiful, and they took them as wives, and then they bore children, and these children were um, the Nephilim, right? And they were these
Right.
giants, and then the Nephilim were, as you know, they were extremely dangerous. They were at one point they turned to eating humans, and that's also goes back to the story of David and Goliath, because Goliath was supposedly one of these creatures as well. But the Anunnaki had a race of slave-like creatures beings that they created genetically. So it's funny because you talk about Christianity, you're talking about these spiritual entities, right? And then when you talk about the Sumerians, you're talking about ancient aliens. But it seems like that there's a parallel in the descriptions of who they are and what they were here to do. And in the case of the Anunnaki, they came here because their planet Nibiru, the atmosphere was failing, and so they realized that if they could put um, gold into the atmosphere, like gold dust, gold particles in the atmosphere, it would reflect enough of the sun's radiation and save the planet. So they came here to mine gold, but they weren't going to do it themselves. So they had this race of slaves that they created, and these were the ones that were mining, and they were basically increase the output. And I'm going into paraphrasing, but they basically were working them to death. And they at one point they rebelled, but they also realized that this race of hominids that existed on this planet, these intelligent hominids, could be modified to do basically the same thing. And then supposedly
Right.
they did some DNA tampering, and they created some of the earliest human race, and used them for mining. Now, they were also supposed to stay rather um, unenlightened. Okay, but at some point, I think it was Enki that started teaching them secrets of fire and technology, and they built cities and they made weapons. They went to war with each other, and then that whole thing just kind of fell apart. And then at one point, the Anunnaki they left because there was this great disaster. They knew that when Nibiru came close to Earth again, that it was going to totally wreak havoc on the planet. Okay, now the interesting thing is that if you look in Christianity, you have the flood myth, right? And it's funny because you talk about the great flood myth and they call it a flood myth, but yet we found evidence all over the world that there was a giant flood that did hit the planet. You remember the CIA had pictures. I know Grizz can allude to the CIA had pictures on in the mountains of Ararat, because it wasn't on the Mount Ararat, it was in the mountains of Ararat where they honestly believed that they found the remains of Noah's Ark. When they went back and tested it, they did find remains of a giant boat. They found
Yep.
remains of animal feces.
They did.
They found a village nearby where whoever landed there started a settlement. I mean, and it was funny because a lot of this stuff was classified by the CIA, and it's like, well, why would you need to classify this? And this could be a whole other conversation that goes back to who's really in charge. So anyway, so you have this thing. So they mated with the humans, they had the Nephilim, and supposedly what happened was that this great flood that hit wasn't to destroy humanity because humanity became wicked. It was really to destroy the Nephilim. It was to wipe out this abomination. And the way it was supposed to go was, Noah was earmarked. And to save animals, save himself, save humanity, but it wasn't anticipated that all humans would die. There would be collateral damage in this flood, but it was to wipe out the Nephilim. And yeah, I believe Gilgamesh was a Nephilim hybrid, but it was to wipe out the Nephilim. But there's always been a theory that some of them survived, because you look at, for example, Native Americans talk about the red-headed giants, and so forth. So there's always been there's always been a theory that not all of them were killed in this great flood. But anyway, so that's we have the Nephilim. Now, when you get into the fallen ones, like going back to what you were talking about, Christine, is this: if you have this race of angelic beings, right, and they're cast out because of their interactions with humanity, and they're not allowed to ascend anymore, and they're stuck here on this plane, right? If this is the case, where did they go? They didn't just vanish. My personal opinion is they're still here. And my personal opinion, what's that?
I was going to say, I don't know if you've heard the story of when the flood happened, that people were taken to Middle Earth and they were kept there until the flood was over. And that's how we actually have humanity here still, right? And I'm learning so much from you. I want you to know I'm loving this, but I'm wondering if, because they were hybrid and they were unknown to the human eye, if maybe some of them were taken to Middle Earth as part of the saved ones. And then once they were brought back up after the flood, they're able to continue on.
Sorry, I mean to laugh. I was looking at what Diesel said.
I know, right? Ginger snap. What the heck, Diesel? Yes.
That's hilarious.
Gosh. Yeah, but I just think that you're dealing with a race of beings here, and they don't exist like we exist in this physical realm in the same way. And I think that that's, for example, when people do come across and they see these things, they're saying, oh, you're dealing with something that's been here they say they've been here forever, right? But they're not human, they're non-human. Okay,
they're meant to protect.
And then if that's the case, and if they were cast out, they, because of their interactions with humans, and they're stuck here and they can no longer ascend back to that heavenly or spirit, I won't say heavenly plane, but spiritual plane, this, because I think that you have many levels to go before you actually get to like this Havona type thing, like they describe in like the book of Urantia and so forth. But anyway, I kind of think that if this is the case and they're bound here, yeah, they probably hold a lot of animosity toward the human race. And if that's the case, and they know, for example, Mark Bolden is about to die, they would probably try their best to keep me here to where they can use my energy, torture me. Who knows what they're trying? But either way, it's probably not going to be good. So I do think it's important when you come across these trapped souls, it is important to cross them over. This is not a healthy place for them to exist. And I think they need to be crossed over. And so when I see these locations and people investigate these locations, I'm like, all right, well, you're seeing these spirits. What are you doing for them? Some of them are calling out for help. Are you actually trying to help them?
Yes, that's what. And that's what my question was.
Yeah, I think they should. Look, I can tell you an interesting story. This one location, and I can't get too much into it, but one of the locations I think was pretty amazing. What came out of it was, in the investigation, they actually noticed that this was a location, one of many around the planet, and there were angels there, and there were spirits there that were actually helping the dead that hadn't crossed over, the people that had were in a state of confusion, or they haven't accepted the fact that they've died, and they were actually blowing trumpets and letting people know this is a place for you to come to for help, and that there are places around the planet like that, around the earth like that, where they're trying to help these wayward spirits and move them on to the next existence. And these are and it's amazing that even in the afterlife there are people that hung around on purpose to try to help the others into the next life.
Right.
Which is what exactly that ties into exactly what we do in our platform of Love and Light. Is we try to take the individuals while they're here and we try to help them. We're not perfect ourselves, but we're a safe space, and we create that listening space to help individuals see a different perspective, so that they can resolve those problems now. So that when the time, unfortunate, does come, they're not being a lost soul, that they've resolved those. They've let go of all of the hurt, the anger, the resentment, all of the negative vibrations and energy, and that it's less confusion when the time does go on. And it doesn't matter how old you are, because we all know we don't know when our last time is.
Now,
And
do you think this is a question for all of you guys? So when people are at end of life, right, whether they're in a hospice or they just got in a car accident, right, is it an issue where, because I've heard different things from investigators and psychic mediums, and you have cases where sometimes people just think where they're afraid of being judged, so they don't go into the light, right? Or they're afraid of the light because they don't, maybe in life they were an atheist, or they weren't really a very spiritual person, and this whole thing's hit them so sudden that they don't know what to do, and they avoid going into the light, they avoid crossing over. And then I wonder if that's, if we're looking at the reason why people are stuck here, is that specifically it? Just because they were scared to go into the light, they were afraid of being judged, or maybe they just hung out because they figured they wanted to see how they didn't want to abandon their relatives, or maybe they love where they're at, the home that they're in, or something. Who knows? I don't know. What do you think?
I personally think that it's a mixture of everything that you just said, right? It depends on the soul, because we leave our body, we're still a soul, we're still an entity. We still have our memories, and sometimes some of us are stuck having to go back and live another life to graduate from the school, where some of us have graduated and it's time for us to go on to our next schooling, and we're not ready yet because we want to make sure our loved ones get the right direction, or because we feel like there was something that we didn't finish, even though we did. I really think that it is a multitude of things that keep souls, spirits, what do you want to call them, here on Earth. We're not meant to be here forever. And if you don't learn that in your life, you get a karmic life cycle, right? You come back again. So that's the best way I can answer your question.
I'm with you 100% on that answer. You guys familiar with the name Eben Alexander? He wrote a book called Proof of Life. I think it was called Proof of Heaven. That's what it's called. But he was this guy. Here's a guy that he was atheist. He didn't believe. He thought he's a neurosurgeon, scientist. He figured when you died, that was it. Lights are out. You cease to exist. Everything fades to black. No more you. And then he also felt that people who had near-death experiences, he felt that what they were experiencing were the last few firings of their brain synapses, and when they brought back, they had these hallucinations of this afterlife experience. And it was funny because that was his experience until he contracted a very rare form of meningitis, and he was brain dead. I mean, they were going to pull the plug, brain dead. And he came back, and when he came back, all of a sudden he realized there is a God, there is an afterlife, there's everything. And he had a story to tell that will knock the socks off. But he also told about when he was there, I think he called it the muck. He said when he first crossed over, he was stuck in this, like almost like the muck, this gook. And he didn't really have a memory of his past life. And then he was there, he said it seemed like forever with other people. And at some point, the sky lit up, everything turned super bright, and he was lifted from this muck. And then that's where the whole positive experience started. And it's funny because not only him, but I've heard from other people too, that some people, when they pass on, it's almost like they have to go through a spiritual detox.
Yep.
Before you move on. Yeah, you can't just come back from this human existence and then boom, you're in this next level of existence. Because what we're here to do is, this is like Evan called, he said, this is soul school. You're here to learn, and you're you get elevated to different vibrational levels with every experience on Earth.
Earth is a school of emotion.
Yeah. So even if you come back multiple times, it's sort of like, you failed the 5th grade, you got to come back and repeat the grade to learn what you're supposed to learn.
Exactly.
And then you can go to 6th grade and keep going to higher levels. And I just found that really amazing. And like I said, because of those things, I will always tell people, if they're nearing the end of life, or they have relatives there, I say, make sure you tell them, you go into that light. Don't hang out here.
Exactly. So we are kind of towards the end of our show here, but I have another question, maybe two, that I want to get you to answer real quick. So,
Okay.
do you believe that angels, not just fallen angels, but actual angels from the angelic realm, are here? And if so, do you think that if you have an encounter with them, that a wraith comes and wipes your memory?
You know, I don't think that a wraith comes and wipes your memory. I do think that they're here. I do think that they exist. I think that, when they say about they whisper in your ear and kind of guide you and so forth, I think that 100%. I can tell you firsthand. I always joke around. I say there's this little voice that talks to me, and every time I don't listen to that voice, things go horribly wrong. If I do, great, everything's awesome. Um, but I do think that they do exist on this plane. As a matter of fact, even with one of the recent investigations I was on, that really helped to confirm that. But also, a lot of people forget what the description of angels are. They kind of have this whole thing where they think these are these, either these cherubs or this guy with the flowing hair and he's blowing, and if you look
Well,
at the
Mark,
description,
that
yeah.
ruins me out then, doesn't it?
Well, if you look at the descriptions, so some of these are kind of disturbing. When you look, you talk about eyes being everywhere, even in the wings and things like that. And even if you look at what Ezekiel described, it's kind of disturbing. However, you're not scared of it. You know what I mean? There's nothing that says they have to look like you or me. And maybe some of them do, maybe some of them don't. Maybe they change their appearances just to not make people frightened at their appearance. Who knows? But I do think that they're there. I don't know if a wraith comes and wipes your memory, because there are people that claim to have had angelic encounters, and nobody wiped their memory. But yeah, I think that I think that they're here. I think they walk among us. I think that they influence us, and it's up to you as to whether you have enough faith to where you actually say, yeah, this is an actual spiritual intervention.
Well,
That's
to
a
answer
key
your question
question.
earlier, I think that as individuals are at the end of life, whether it be like you said, a hospice situation or even a sudden situation, I think it's about what we have unfinished here, not only within our own self and our own soul, because we have to understand, no matter how, if you talk about it biblically, factually, in whatever sense, these bodies are a temple.
Hmm.
They're just a vessel. That's all they are. Myself, I'm nothing more than what my conscious is.
Yeah.
And so conscious being spirit, or however you want to word it, that's what moves on. And whatever we don't have finished here is what keeps us attached to this world. And so the sooner that individuals that can speak with the other side or communicate, such as yourself or Christina or Grizzly, your duty becomes to help, like you said, to help those individuals move on
Yeah.
and to resolve the issues. And I'm being a Gen X person, I can think off the top of my head about 4 or 5 different TV shows from that time that had to do with that same very topic. But
Hmm.
it's just fascinating that people have to understand, as we are here right now, you have to work on yourself. You have to do the shadow work. You have to improve yourself here. Otherwise, the baggage that you carry on the other side and moving forward for your conscience, it's going to hold you in, for lack of better words, purgatory that much longer.
I agree 100%.
Grizzly, any comments on that?
I just wish I had my hair.
Well, with that being said, Mark, I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation with you. I hope that we can get together and do this again soon. You are
Sure, I'd
such
love
a
to.
wealth of knowledge for this community. So I feel so blessed to be able to have this conversation with you tonight. Can you let everybody who's listening know how they can find you if they want to contact you?
Yeah, you know what? You can always reach me at my email address at because I have a new website going up for Phase 5 Media. We got a lot of projects in play. But yeah, it's Mark, my name, Mark, and it's spelled out Phase, PHSE, not the number. There it is, phase5media.com. But yeah, you can always reach me there. And I got like a lot of interest. I just uploaded a whole bunch of videos, but they're not going live yet. Right now, there's a big placeholder, and I'm waiting for the okay to publish some stuff. But yeah, it's soon. But we got a lot of cool stuff in play. So, and yeah, if
Thank
you
you
guys,
so much for that.
yeah, absolutely.
Michael, can you let our audience know how they can find you?
I am MB50.1 on TikTok, and make sure that everybody reaches us every Tuesday night here on the BigFoot Outlaw channel at our live podcast at 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Central.
And I am Christina. You can find me on TikTok at allwitchy, or you can find me on Facebook and Instagram, Christina Allwitchy. I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight, especially you, Mark. You've been so wonderful.
Thank you,
Mark.
Broadcasting from coast to coast, all around the world. That's right. We hope y'all have a good night.
Thank you, Mark. I can't wait to have you back on the platform, sir.
Yeah, me too, Chris.
Godspeed, everybody.
Coming to a YouTube channel near you.